at the top, and then a decent and deep dive into differences between a budget that the House majority filed but has not yet moved the other day, and the differences in primarily what it does not fund and needs to fund as compared to the proposal that I offered. So let's start today with Kentucky's economy. Kentucky's economy is booming and showing no signs of slowing down as we enter this new year. Since the beginning of my administration, we've announced nearly 1,000 private sector new location and expansion projects totaling nearly $29 billion of new private sector investment and creating close to 51,300 new full-time Kentucky jobs. Today, I want to kick off our update by highlighting a couple of great projects that are bringing investment into our communities and creating good opportunities and jobs for our families. Last week, I joined local officials and leaders from WPT Nonwovens Corporation to cut the ribbon on the company's new $19.5 million state-of-the-art manufacturing facility in Ohio County. The project is creating 35 new, well-paying jobs to add to the numerous positions already existing in 2 other Ohio County locations for this corporation. This is a third-generation, family-owned company. It's a homegrown success story that's helping us show the world that manufacturing is back and it's healthier than ever in Kentucky. WPT manufactures products in the medical, hygiene, filtration, and industrial markets. The company operates 3 production facilities in Ohio County. There's never been a better time to grow a business here in the Commonwealth, and I'd like to thank WPT for doing just that. Today, we're joined by Travis Robbins, president of WPT, and I'd like to welcome him to the podium to say a few words. We also have his wife and 2 of his kids that are out there with us today. Thank you all for joining us. Very welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Travis Robbins. I'm the president of WPT Nonwovens Corporation from Beaver Dam, Kentucky. WPT specializes in the production of engineered nonwoven fabric serving the air filtration, medical, hygiene, and building materials industries, with loyal customers all over the world who leverage our fabric to create products we use in our everyday life. From furnace filters, diapers, fiber optic cable, roofing paper, wound dressings and bandages, medical packaging, dryer sheets, and the list goes on. WPT is one of the industry's fastest growing companies and one of the last family-owned businesses still manufacturing nonwoven fabric in the United States. In a landscape dominated by large multinational conglomerates, WPT has not only survived, but thrived due to the unique products we create, our world-class service, and our commitment to modernizing and expanding our production capabilities in the United States. Our story starts in 1993. After a successful 30-year career in furniture manufacturing, my grandfather, Wayne Robbins, accepted a plant manager role at a nonwoven mill in Beaver Dam. If you fast forward 15 years, and the ownership of that company called Wayne and announced its insolvency in the wake of the financial crisis in 2008. At the age of 68, Wayne was faced with a unique opportunity and a difficult decision. He could happily and comfortably retire, or he could push all the chips in and go to the auction at the courthouse steps and purchase the plant he spent the last decade and a half managing. After all those years working with customers and leading the team in Beaver Dam, and after much prayer and the unwavering support of his wife, Pat, they trusted God had placed him in this position for a reason and had called him to create a company. Wayne founded WPT Corporation in June of 2008 with the mission to manufacture and supply high-quality American-made cotton medical dressings to the North American healthcare market, creating an opportunity for future generations of his family, saving the jobs of those team members that supported him, and ensuring a vital place of employment would remain in Ohio County. Wayne's courage and resolve has paid off, from humble beginnings to one of the premier American manufacturers of nonwoven fabric in 15 short years. As we near our 16th year of business and open our 3rd plant, it doesn't just represent the newest and most exciting expansion in our company's history, it also represents the largest U.S. expansion of air filtration pleat media in the last decade, and stands as one of the largest production lines ever built in the United States for these products. Right here in Ohio County, proving yet again Western Kentucky is not just a great place to raise a family, but one of the best places in the U.S. to grow and expand manufacturing. Our story is truly the American dream. I'm so proud to be a part of it, and I'm forever grateful for Wayne and the founding team to have the courage to take a risk and believe anything was possible. WPT is the fabric of my family, and I can't wait to see where this incredible journey takes us next. Thank you. Thanks, appreciate it.
Travis is also a veteran, and we appreciate his service, which he did in some very dangerous places protecting our country. We're grateful for you. I'd also like to highlight Staghorn, a producer of premium spirits, on the opening of its very first distillery right here in Kentucky. The Garrett County Distilling Company, which has officially started production in Lancaster. The more than $250 million project will be capable of producing up to 150,000 barrels of bourbon per year while supporting the local economy with more than 60 new jobs. This is also the first commercial distillery in the formerly dry county since the 1800s, showing how great our bourbon industry is truly growing in all corners of the Commonwealth. Located about 30 minutes south of Lexington, the Garrett County Distilling Company will include a distillery as well as 2 rick houses with plans for up to 24 aging warehouses by 2030. Garrett County Distilling is Staghorn's first distillery, and the size of the project is a testament to the worldwide appeal of bourbon. Staghorn's investment is a welcome addition to Garrett County and Kentucky's booming tourism sector. I want to thank the leaders for this great investment. All right, it wouldn't be a Team Kentucky update without an update on the weather. And as we talked about, just buckle up for pretty much now through the end of February. We are seeing system after system after system come in. As this winter weather storm continues, we want to encourage everyone to continue to be weather aware and be prepared for storms that are going to bring hazardous conditions across the Commonwealth. In central Kentucky, we're going to see 2 waves of wintry weather really between this afternoon, or if you're in western Kentucky, it'll be earlier than this afternoon, and tomorrow morning. So as you look, this is the overall summary that is provided by the National Weather Service. We're going to have a round of wintry precipitation that really should be moving into western Kentucky about now. We think we'll hit sometime around 6 in the central Kentucky area. It may hit around the time that people are coming home from work. I'll tell you now that we are concerned enough about it to where we're going to release people from state government buildings at 4 p.m. today, just to make sure they can get home. And if this is going to be a significant event, which it appears it could be at least a moderately significant event, that we have fewer people on the roads because we provided that ability to get home. The toughest part of it is going to be in southern Kentucky, especially the closer you are to the Tennessee border. That is going to get freezing rain. As you go further north, because it's going to be just a little bit warmer, what we're seeing is likely snow. So we're going to have one round that goes through pretty much from now in western Kentucky through the rush hour time period, a little later than that, and then late tonight, another chance for snow. What we're seeing right now is a winter weather advisory for just about all of Kentucky, from noon Eastern today to 7 p.m. Eastern on Friday. It's gotten a little bit warmer, so and we'll have we'll have Jim Gray, our Transportation Cabinet Secretary, correct anything if I'm wrong. But about where we are, a lot of salt on the roads. While it is still light, road conditions may get tough, but the salt should work. The work we're doing should work. But then as it gets dark and our temperatures are going to plunge again, it's going to get just as cold as it was yesterday morning again. Be aware that it can get cold enough to where the salt just doesn't work as well, and there will be limited amounts that we can do on some of these roadways. As you look at this slide, this is about how much ice we're going to get or likely to get. This is better than what the forecast was a day ago for what we thought we'd see. So the ice right now is limited to southern Kentucky, but that goes really western Kentucky, almost up to Pikeville, in a line that gets about as high as E-Town. It could get up to potentially about 1/10 of an inch. That is the kind of aggressive forecast if we get hit as hard as it could be. Other parts of Kentucky, if we get the worst of it, could have a little bit of ice. A little bit can go a long way, but it's more likely snow that we're going to get. Can we continue? All right, this gives you an idea of snowfall accounts. This is what I would call the moderate projection. There's ones where we think we'll get less. There's one where you can add about an inch to everywhere else on this map. Eastern Kentucky, again, is getting hit the hardest in each of these. To everybody out there in the east, we're working as hard as we can with transportation, with KSP, and with all of our different groups. But Central Kentucky is going to get more of the snow in this round than a number of the previous ones. And we'll really see that this afternoon for a period, but then tonight we should see more. Again, our temperatures are, this is the low end. You can keep running through it. And this is the higher end. As you see, what we showed you in the beginning is pretty much right in the middle of those. But let's get to the temperatures. Okay, it's going to get dangerously cold with wind chill again. If we get a lot of snow, the overall temperature will be significantly colder too. Exactly how cold it gets will depend on both the snowpack and what the weather conditions are like. But right now we see, especially by the time we hit Saturday morning, for it to be brutally cold again. And if wind chills hit where they are on this map, you can get frostbite in about 30 minutes. So we need people to be careful. For those in Western Kentucky, they're already under a winter weather advisory. It started at 10 a.m. today. That goes into 9 a.m. on Friday. A couple key takeaways: slow down, especially if this hits this afternoon or earlier in any place that you're at. You don't need to be on the interstate going 60 if we have wintry weather that's hit, and if we know that we could have ice and that we could have snow. If you're moving that fast, you might not be able to avoid our equipment. Remember, our snow plows need to be able to go through, and they are much bigger than your vehicle. So slow down and be careful. Precipitation is forecasted again to be all snow across the Commonwealth by Friday morning. National Weather Service is going to continue to give us updates, which we are going to provide on social media and in other ways. We will make a call on state office buildings either later tonight or very early tomorrow. There is a possibility that the weather is significant enough that that we potentially make a call there about people staying home. KYTC, who you're going to hear from, is working hard. Remember, they start with the major routes. It takes a longer period of time, especially if it's colder and conditions are difficult to get to the secondary routes. So please, once this hits, especially this afternoon, don't be on the roads until you have to. If you can get home after work today and not go out again until work on Friday, if you're going to have work on Friday, then we need you to do that. Get a full tank of gas on your way home if it's not bad. Make sure you have a weather kit in your car. Now I'll turn it over to Transportation Secretary Jim Gray to share more. Hope I didn't steal all your stuff.
No, you got it, Governor. Yeah, Governor, I'm just going to dig in a little bit more on our preparedness and a little bit in the rearview mirror on what we've done in the last 3 or 4 days. I want to give a shout out right out of the gate to our employees, to the team members of the Transportation Cabinet, especially the Department of Highways. More than 2,000 employees are actually active in a snow event, in a snow and ice event like this. We've got the best crews in the business serving on Team Kentucky. I mentioned we've got more than 2,000 now. In addition to that, there are contractors. We've got, in terms of equipment, 1,000 pieces of equipment. That's snow plows. And in addition to that, we've got the contractors and their equipment. That's roughly 400 more pieces of equipment. They got a little bit of a break in the last couple of days. But even then, our crews have been servicing our snow plow trucks, and the blades to ensure that they remain in good working order. I want to give a quick shout out because these folks have been doing so much and doing so well. I want to give a quick shout out to our equipment teams. Rick Durham is the lead there. Our maintenance teams led by Josh Rogers and Randy Feltner. Those are our snow and ice teams. They've been working on preparing for events like this, believe it or not, since August, since the summer months. they're on high alert for the next round of winter weather that the governor was just describing. I've been talking just this morning, this morning with our chief district engineers, especially in those areas expected to be hardest hit. And they are describing how they've described to me how they're prepared. Their folks are going to be working duty tonight, beginning at 5 o'clock. They'll have overnight duty. So, as the governor mentioned, we are expecting a wintry mix with possible freezing rain to begin today, this afternoon, early evening, and continue into Friday morning. That will be followed by sub-zero temperatures over the weekend. And of course, when temperatures drop to these levels, our treatment chemicals aren't as fast acting. And of course, you cannot plow ice. So the good thing is there's a coating of salt and calcium chloride on routes that were pre-treated during our last round. We have to work that much harder, though, to keep priority routes open, like the interstates and the parkways, before, as the governor mentioned, before we move to the other routes. But you can be assured that our crews are working tirelessly to keep traffic moving, and will be. If there is ice accumulation, and there is expected to be some, traveling in your vehicle will become extremely dangerous. And to echo the governor, please avoid being on the roads if you don't have to. I want to encourage folks, too, to be mindful of where they park their vehicles. We've heard some reports of folks who are parking at the bottoms of steep driveways, and that can sometimes mean parking too close to the road, making it a safety hazard for plows and other motorists. For those of you who have to be on the road, please remember the following safe driving tips. Buckle up and put the phone down. Reduce your speed. Governor talked about this. Reduce your speed. Give yourself plenty of time to reach your destination. Give yourself plenty of room between you and the vehicle in front of you and behind you. And keep both hands on the wheel. So I urge everyone to stay weather alert by monitoring weather forecasts. The governor's already talked about our snowky.ky.gov site. There you will find links to your local highway district social media accounts so you can track what's going on in your area. And finally, check traffic on a navigational app like Waze or on our website at goky.ky.gov. Now I'll turn it back over to the governor.
I also want to echo what a great job our transportation cabinet employees and others do, just like the state police. Have a great update from really our last weather update from the state police. And that's that Walter Dwayne Dale, who was reported missing from Corbin on Sunday when temperatures started to drastically decrease, was found alive on Tuesday. KSP had issued a golden alert for Mr. Dale on Monday at the request of park rangers. And by Tuesday, the McCreary County 911 Emergency Center received a tip. So thank you to all of our local officials, the fire department, state law enforcement, EMS, and emergency management for their dedication in this search. To remind you that this weather is treacherous, even though we have done, I think, altogether a very good job of preserving life just from Sunday to Tuesday. KSP responded to more than 160 stranded vehicles and more than 145 collisions. So let me just say, thankfully, we don't have confirmed reports of us losing people in any of these accidents, but going out when there is, significant accumulation, when there is ice, is dangerous. 160 stranded vehicles, 145 collisions is more than any of us want to see. Remember to have that kit in your car, and also don't call 911 for road conditions or weather. Team Kentucky is building a better Kentucky, and one way we do that is by improving transportation. Having good, reliable roads and bridges makes our lives and businesses better. And having a safe ride to work, to school, and to church is one thing our families should not have to worry about, though it's one of the first things we think about each morning. As a dad and as governor, making investments that help our families get to where they're going safely is absolutely critical. I'm pleased to share that yesterday I unveiled my 2024 Recommended Highway Plan, which is a guide to improve transportation in Kentucky. This is a 6-year plan centered on 3 key areas. Number 1, maintaining existing roads and bridges. Number 2, constructing projects and fulfilling past commitments, while third, advancing ongoing initiatives. The plan's based on anticipated revenues of $8.65 billion through 2030 from a blend of federal and state road dollars. Some of the state's most ambitious and transformational projects are included. Projects my administration is committed to getting done for the people of Kentucky, such as building the Brent Spence Companion Bridge in northern Kentucky without tolls, 4-laning the entire Mountain Parkway in eastern Kentucky, and pursuing the I-69 project between Henderson and Evansville and all the other portions in western Kentucky. Now, these aren't just projects. They're a big part of opening up different parts of our state for more commerce and better jobs. That's why I had in my budget proposal, and it is not in the House's initial budget, though it could be, in their transportation budget, $300 million in general funds to speed up the Mountain Parkway and the I-69 project, as well as $50 million in a grant pool to help repair local bridges. My highway plan includes funding to support Kentucky's over 9,000 bridges and 63,000 lane miles of pavement, which makes us the nation's 7th largest bridge system, and we're the 8th largest pavement system. We have to be good stewards of public dollars, and that means making needed investments to infrastructure along the way. That's why we invest $14.45 million in the biennium to enhance highway safety with 65 miles of new guardrails. This investment is particularly crucial to eastern Kentucky, known for its challenging terrain with steep slopes and curvy roads. For example, Harlan County has 10 projects in the plan with nearly 10 miles of guardrails. Floyd County has 14 projects with nearly 4 miles of guardrail, and Knott County will have about 13 projects, about 4.5 miles of new guardrail. We know these investments are a pathway to prosperity and safety, and some of the investments in here will do a whole lot to support economic growth statewide. For example, in McCracken County, there's a project in the highway plan to build a new access road to the Ohio River Megapark, an industrial site in western Kentucky. In Corbin, we'll widen I-75, a critical commerce corridor, and we believe I-75 will be the next I-65 in terms of future growth and certainly expanding the interstate system, especially in southern Kentucky as we move north, will be a big economic driver in that region. We'll be working with the General Assembly to get the best plan passed possible, because at the end of the day, these investments aren't red or blue, D or R, they're just important to moving our families forward. I'm also happy to announce that some communities in Breathitt County that were severely affected by the 2021 Eastern Kentucky flooding will soon have a more reliable drinking water system. Breathitt County has just been awarded $1.7 million from the bipartisan infrastructure bill to replace damaged water lines. The project, overseen by the Division of Abandoned Mine Lands, will make water line repairs in the communities of Lost Creek Road, Haddocks through Altro Road, Watts, and the Turners Creek through Freeman Fork areas. Repairs will include the replacement of the 6-inch water lines, 4-inch water lines, radio read meters, and meter bases, and the installation of hydrants. Every community deserves reliable and safe drinking water, and 961 homes in Breathitt County are positively impacted by this project. All right. For the next segment, which is going to take some time, we're going to go through comparisons of the draft budget that the House that Chairman Petrie recently filed versus the one that I proposed. What you will see is it adds more red tape to the operation of state government that we have ever seen, requiring so many reports it would grind the executive branch to a halt. It includes major and massive limitations on responding to natural disasters with limits we've never seen before in state law that could require special sessions in the midst of natural disasters. So I guess the 137 people trying to manage the immediate relief efforts. It includes severe limitations on additional money to house prisoners, which up until recent years, we've always had more prisoners than budgeted in our penal systems. This would require us to house them with no money for them. There are fewer public safety investments, significantly less dollars going to our public schools, and a lot of other big concerns, including a massive cut to state government personnel across the board with absolutely no study on what these positions are and how much they might impact us. I'll tell you, we'll have fewer corrections officers, and we will not be able to hire the DJJ youth detention officials that are necessary to keep them safe. So let's start going through them. Let's go to the first slide. I will say that we've put these together as fast as we can because we're about 36 hours after this was filed. So the slides won't be perfect. This is the best information we have at the moment. This is really surprising. For the first time ever, we have significant and severe limitations on what are called necessary government expenses. That's what we're allowed to use after the floods to make sure that we're getting water and other needed expenses to places that go. It's what we use to have the funds to fight the wildfires that were all over the state for a period of time. They're what we use when we have extra prisoners we're asked to house, and we have a constitutional duty to do that. So for the first time, there's a limitation. I think it's $50 million to respond to an emergency through necessary governmental expenses. That wouldn't get us through an ice storm. So if this is part of the final budget, if it's legal, that means that in any major natural disaster, you'd have to have a special session, which would be really challenging if the state is shut down due to an ice storm or other issues. I think there is a $4 million limit that we're allowed to use in necessary governmental expenses to fight forest fires. So after that, I guess either we have to have a special session or you let it burn. I don't think either are how we ought to be operating state government. There is no new funding, at least in this bill, to the Eastern Kentucky Safe Fund. That fund had three parts. It has the education part that still has money in it. It has the transportation cabinet part that still has some, but there's a lot to do there, and it just takes time to spend. The part that helps local governments, because they've had revenue wiped out with different areas wiped out, and or to meet FEMA matching requirements, we already can't fund about $36 million worth of needs, somewhere between 25 and 36 that have already been submitted, and more is to come. Remember, in Eastern Kentucky, we had $1 billion worth of damage to our wastewater and water systems alone. This would certainly slow down the recovery in Eastern Kentucky. Let's go to the next one. This budget, and I don't think this has been reported on, has a massive reduction in state personnel without any study, without any request to us on which areas are being impacted and by how much. Here's what they do. When we have a vacancy across state government, we're trying to fill it. And remember, we just had salary increases. Think about what the state police salaries went up or the correction salaries went up. What this budget does is it took all the vacancies that exist right now, and that could mean someone left a week ago, and they cut 95% of them. No longer funded, no longer exist in state government. So all these spots we're trying to fill, social workers, corrections officers, state police, you pick it. If there is a vacancy today for any reason, if they're an area that we've been told do better and we're working on hiring, 95% of all those positions wiped out. It's about $250 million worth of state employees that past budgets have recognized are incredibly important. This is just taking a hatchet and hacking at the executive branch without even looking. It's like putting on a blindfold and trying to cut something up. It's going to halt significant progress. And let me give you a few examples of exactly what it does. And I will tell you, I doubt that the drafters of this budget even know what we're going to be talking about and what we're going to be able to show because they never asked. This was a complete and total surprise. The Department of Corrections loses over $16 million of necessary personnel costs at a time we're trying to hire extra corrections officers. So we went to the legislature and we said, we don't have enough corrections officers. We need to move the pay to $50,000. They said, you're right. we can't hire enough people unless you raise them. So we got that legislation passed. We started hiring corrections officers, and then they came in and whacked all the positions that we now have the money to actually fill that we previously haven't been able to fill. Community-based services are our social workers. We've worked really hard to get raises for social workers, and over time, while it's not happening as fast as we'd like, we're getting more and more social workers. $17 million. Most of this is DCBS, the people who help our kids that are subjected to abuse and neglect. This will be fewer people helping those. Department of Juvenile Justice, $14 million of positions that have been eliminated, not funded. This includes the detention staff. Remember, the legislature and rightfully has said we have to have safer juvenile justice detention centers. We're going to get to the fact they didn't fund the necessary safety renovations we needed in a minute, or the new constructions. But basically, we just got the pay increased. When I came in, it was less than $30,000. It's about $50,000 now, which means we're getting more and more applications. Yet at the time we finally have the ability to fill those positions and create a safe environment, 95% of those vacancies are gone without the funding to ultimately hire the folks. And the Veterans Center facilities, one of the hardest things in hiring has been to get nurses for our veterans home. We increased those salaries. We're doing better. $18 million cut. A whole lot of these positions are the necessary nursing staff to take care of our veterans, who we open up our state veterans nursing centers to. Let me just tell you, this will create less safe juvenile justice facilities, less safe corrections institutions. There will be less safety for kids at risk of abuse and neglect, and our veterans will not get the care that they need and that previous budgets recognized were really the bare minimum for what they should have. We will get more on this, but this is a significant, major reduction. When remember, government is much smaller than it was 15 years ago. Cut significantly back during the Great Recession, hasn't nearly grown back to where it was before. And to have a $250 million cut in services across the board without looking specifically at any specific area at a time that we have record revenues that are coming in. And again, without consulting the very people that have to take the policy the legislature passes and enact it. These cuts are debilitating and will prevent us from doing the work that is necessary. On top of that, this budget doesn't cut red tape. It adds more governmental red tape than I have ever seen in my lifetime. Let's go to the next one. Specifically, no, that's not it. It paralyzes government. There you go. It requires quarterly reports to the A&R committee in the House for virtually every appropriation in the budget. Think about how long that budget is and how many of them there are. This is basically every single division of government for everything that they do, submitting a quarterly report that when you look at the requirements is going to be of significant length. Every group in state government we've talked to has said we will no longer be able to do work. We will be writing reports every single day about everything that we do. Now, let me give you an example. They ask, and this is the one that I understand the best, for one of these comprehensive reports for every executive order issued by the governor. It has to be in, I think, within 7 days, and updates within 30 days. And if one of them isn't in those 7 days, there's a 10% reduction, they say, in the appropriation to the governor's office. In other words, if we miss 10 reports, and you'll see how many of them would be required, there is zero funding to the governor's office. Now, we don't think that's legal, but obviously that is more red tape than we've ever seen. So let me just, before we even get to other cabinets and their reports, tell you about executive orders. These are the number of executive orders that I issue every year. And maybe they're thinking about executive orders like COVID or states of emergency. Folks, every Kentucky colonel is an executive order. In other words, they want a comprehensive report that goes through the reasons for each of these and what impacts it has on constitutional rights. We would have to issue them with every Kentucky colonel issued in the Commonwealth. It's every single executive branch appointment. It's a lot of the executive branch positions that we hire on, it's writs of elections, it's judicial vacancies, it's extraditions, it's approval of university attorneys for their legal services. Each and every one of these requiring a multi-page report every time they're issued and regular and consistent updates to them. This is the type of red tape that prevents things from getting done in government. And let me say, this isn't policy and oversight, which is the role of the General Assembly. This is direct micromanagement and attempts to penalize within that micromanagement. This isn't workable. I believe it is beyond the separation of powers, but more than that, it's going to grind to a halt people actually getting things done because of the amount of paperwork that every section and part of the executive branch would have to be completing. And remember, there are already committees that oversee all parts of the executive branch that have the ability to call people in, that regularly already get reports. These reports to the A&R committee are unprecedented. I mean, you're talking about tens of thousands of pages probably every month that would be going to them, taking massive numbers of hours out. At the time that we also lose 95% of our vacant positions. I mean, it's an unfunded mandate that will take the full amount of time of numerous state employees for all of their work. It'll be all that they do at a time when it looks like they're trying to reduce the workforce. Let's get to our public schools. Certainly, the House's proposed budget fails to invest in our public schools and public school educators in the way that we need. It has $1.1 billion less for SEEK over the 2 years. And remember, our budget had a low level of borrowing and took $0 from the rainy day fund. And still, we had $1.1 billion more in SEEK over the 2 years. And there's $1.5 billion less for the Department of Education's general fund. First thing they do is fail to do what we have to do in this session, and that is to effectuate significant teacher raises, significant raises for everyone in our public school systems. Remember, Tennessee just did this. We're already losing teachers to them. It is what's required to remain competitive. No funding for universal pre-K. I hear that some don't believe in universal pre-K, but it's the only way we can address 1/4 of our child care needs, every 4-year-old. It's the only way we not only get a portion of 34,000 Kentucky kids that might not have any child care coverage right now into it, but we'll open up about 4,000 federally funded slots in child care that currently have 4-year-olds for younger children. Just giving a blanket investment in child care without universal pre-K is not going to add one child care slot anywhere in Kentucky. It's not going to solve any of the child care desert issues. You got to do them together if we want to have a real impact. They still fail to fully fund student transportation. Remember, there's a law in the books that says we have to, but that's suspended, and they only fund 80%. So we don't want this to be Groundhog Day. In the last budget, the General Assembly, what they did in this budget, they said, we're going to give you more money through SEEK, and we'd really like for you to give raises to your employees. But they didn't fully fund student transportation, which left a big gap that some schools had to fill with some of the money or all the money they would have used for raises. Again, the General Assembly shorts them this critical money that they have to come up with. They have to fund their transportation needs, which will endanger the ability to do raises. It's the same mistake made last time, and they ought to expect the same result. And there's no funding for school resources like textbooks and technology, as well as professional development that we require our educators to get. No funding for the career and technical centers. This was Robert Stiver's project originally that we fully agreed with. We spent about $240 million investing in career and technical centers all across Kentucky. There are more, like the one in Floyd County, that really need it, completely left out of this budget, even though it is one-time spending. And half the funding that's needed for Friskies, half the funding that we put into our budget. Next, the version of the House's budget hinders new job growth and infrastructure, does not invest at a time when we have the money and truly can not just move forward, but sprint forward with the right investments. If you look down at the job ready site development, not fully funded, this is the KPDI program that's working so well. 100 million was in the last budget. They only did 75 in this one. And they put $0 in the closing fund that had 100 million the last time. I can tell you every dollar of the closing fund the last time, will not yet expended, is docketed towards a project right now that, if closed, would be one of the larger projects we've had in a while. Without having that closing fund, we don't have the ability, when the company says, well, if only we had an access road, if only our sewer pipe was 6 inches instead of 4 inches, if only ... That is what the closing fund helps us do. And it's already really limited by the General Assembly to some of the biggest projects out there. It eliminated the talent attraction program that our regional chambers came up with. I hear the General Assembly say, we've got to get more people to move to Kentucky on a weekly basis. This is how you get it done, and it wasn't funded. They only put $150 million in for clean drinking water programs. We had $500 million. I will tell you, the 150 figure they have, that'll only finish the projects that have already been started, with the last round due to increased costs. County judges, mayors know how important this is. Much smaller aviation grants. It went from 50 million to about 11. Our regional airports are gateways to our communities, critical for economic development. They create jobs in their own right. Look at the Muhlenberg County airport and the project they have there. They eliminated funding for the South Korean office. I mean, this is a place where we can be incredibly competitive, where we're seeing major investments. It's a $500,000 in a $120 to $136 billion budget, very short-sighted. And it eliminates the Everybody Counts funding, which is aimed at getting every high school senior either in higher ed or in a job before they graduate. One of the most concerning parts of this budget is what it doesn't do in juvenile justice. Let's go to the next slide. So there's been a working group that we have worked with, and what they've repeatedly said is, tell us what you need and we will fund it. This budget doesn't do it. We've talked a number of times about the fact that we need more personnel for security. And remember, we got those raises, which was good, but this budget would cut all the vacant positions we're trying to fill, so we would not have the personnel we need to keep our facilities safe. But the other thing that we talked to the committee about that they agreed on is that these were built at a time when they didn't have to be as secure as they are right now. One of them where one of the juveniles used a lighter to start the fire alarm is because it was a drop ceiling with tiles, which you can't have in one of these facilities. So we asked for funding for, I think it's 3 or 4, the Fayette County, the McCracken County, the Breathitt County facilities need some significant safety upgrades. They don't fund any of them. And then we asked for 2 female-only facilities, neither of which is funded. What this will prevent is the regional approach that the legislature wants to go back to, because it's not safe without the security upgrades. They are meant to create separate facilities inside Breathitt, inside Fayette, for higher level and lower level. And what it'll mean is continued longer drives for law enforcement, which they have rightfully brought up concerns about. But if we don't have the dollars to ultimately do what needs to be done in those facilities to meet the mandate of the General Assembly, remember, the General Assembly says, executive branch, we want you to carry out this policy. We have to have 2 things. We have to have the personnel to do it, and we have to have the funding for any physical equipment or other upgrades that are needed to do it. If you limit either, you've created an unfunded mandate, and it makes it hard, if not impossible, for us to carry out what you've asked to do. A couple of things in corrections. They start here. We asked for more addiction treatment services. Right now, we have the lowest recidivism rate we've ever had. It's due to 3 things: more treatment beds inside corrections, better reentry services than we've had in a long time, and more second chance employment. Knowing we're doing better, knowing that that can make our community safer, we asked for more funding for addiction treatment, more funding for reentry services. This cuts both of those requests. No funds for the Kentucky State Reformatory demolition. We thought that We were all on board on this one. This was a surprise. This is the Kentucky State Reformatory's fallen down. We can't use most of it right now. It is old. It's fallen down. And we are already building at, I think it's Little Sandy. There's a Big Sandy and a Little Sandy. The replacement beds that are needed. This one, maybe they're planning on putting in the next budget. We have major renovation projects at the Eastern Kentucky Correctional Complex. This is our largest prison. We very much need those renovations. They're about keeping it operational. And we also had, I think, a very forward-looking facility that we were funding in our budget that created a job training center on site at the Eastern Kentucky Correctional Complex. In other words, learn on site near the end of your sentence those skills that will get you in a good job. We were going to own the facility. eCami, with the proven track record, was going to come in to run it. That's not in there. By the way, we also need $6 million for an HVAC system at the Radcliffe Nursing Home. I mean, the HVAC system isn't going to work for the veterans that are in there. That wasn't funded in this budget. We also see real cuts to healthcare. That's $62 million in Medicaid. So think about all the hospitals that impacts. They failed to fund the Marquis Cancer Center. I think we provide $10 million a year to that and have in the past. They didn't fund the Pikeville Medical Center psychiatric residency. They didn't fund Tim's Law, the dollars that were in there. Listen, I know people right now whose son overdosed and won't go in for treatment. This is the way that you try to get people that help that they need. Remember, we talked about how our budget would make sure that relatives in the foster care system earn the same, get the same payments from the state to support those kids, and how that meant we could have more foster care parents. They did not fund that full equalization rate that we requested on that side. And then, while it is not in this slide, we had significant additional funding for nursing homes. When you take our state amount and look at the federal match, the General Assembly's failure to fund what we put in our budget would mean $550 million less for our nursing home facilities over the next 2 years. So significantly less funding in healthcare to systems that have been up here and have testified about their significant needs. Let's go to the next one. There are a lot of community projects that are really important to different areas of this state to move and to push them forward. Here are a list that were not funded, from the Ashland Conference Center to the Frankfurt Convention Center and the Franklin County Lakeview Park Event Center. And every Louisville project, I believe, that we had in there was marked out. The Martin County Water Project, right, where there's a great need and has been for a long time, eliminated that funding as well. These are all important, bipartisan, and the requests that have come in are bipartisan for them. These are the type of investments we've made in the past. They're one-time investments. All right, let's go to the next one. So here's a big piece. This version of the budget is significantly less fiscally responsible. What do I mean by that? Our budget used only one-time funds for one-time expenses, recurring funds for recurring expenses, but also had a small level of borrowing. The last budget that's passed, we're still in it, but the last 2-year budget had the most borrowing, the largest amount of debt and new debt that we have ever seen in a budget. And this one has the second most debt. Now, that may be that all they have to pay for in this budget is the debt service. So this doesn't end up as an expenditure when they look at potential tax breaks. But let me tell you, if you want to get down a half a point in the income tax, maybe you do this so you can hide all the money you're really spending. But if you eventually want to get to zero, your debt service is going to go up, up, and up. And what you're going to owe over time is going to become severely problematic. So if you look at the last 2 budgets, more debt, and again, not just each budget, but both of them together that we have ever seen. Also, next slide, we did all of our spending without drawing on the rainy day fund. I think they take about $1.7 billion out of it. There's also, as we're going through it, and we'll find more, a bunch of funny and fuzzy math. I will tell you one of them is when we look at UI, and we've talked how we had between 90 and 95 positions eliminated in the Bevin administration and how we need them. And federal funding just ran out for a separate group that we had. So in the budget, they fund the 90 positions, but only with only with federal dollars. And I will tell you, those federal dollars don't exist. So there's not real money there, even though it's included in the budget. State employee raises, smaller than we had in our budget, and do not have the compression adjustment that we had in there. We worked really hard on that. We think it's right. They want to use $1 million and get a study with 3 options. None of them will be better than what we have. It'll push off addressing compression that much longer. And I can tell you there's no perfect answer to it. They're just going to spend $1 million to study something that we already have the answer to. Finally, you'll remember in the last budget, we asked for repairs to our state parks. $71 million they put in the budget, but they didn't allow us to spend. At this point, I think we provided information on the room numbers we want to paint and the new chairs we need and what part of the lodge. We have an exhaustive list of what's necessary for it. They've had it. We've sent it to every legislature. The $70 million is still not appropriated for spending, even though it's part of the last budget. If we want our state park systems to be the very best, we got to be able to paint the rooms and fix the leaking roofs and take the steps that are needed as we move forward. So that is our initial deep dive into the budget. Remember, this is pretty preliminary. We're working as fast as we can. From here, our goal is going to be to try to meet with House leadership before it moves. And then certainly to meet with Senate leadership that met with us significantly last time to go over the differences between the two budgets. I will tell you, last time, the House budget left out a ton. There were a number of mistakes in it. That's what happens when you try to leapfrog the executive branch, which has always provided the first draft proposal. We have a whole huge staff to do it, and there's a reason for it. The budget got much better when it went over to the Senate, and they spent a significant amount of time with us and with their people and asking questions on it. I anticipate that it will get better in the Senate, and we'll work really hard with their leadership that I will say have been very open in meetings, in the very least 2 discussions. Let us name our Team Kentucky All-Stars, and then we'll get to questions. This week, I'm naming all those who work at our National Weather Service, our Team Kentucky All-Stars. Right now, I get a briefing just about daily with everything that is coming through. These are folks that work with government officials. These are folks that work with your meteorologists. They work every day to help protect us from severe weather. It's our experts in Paducah, in Louisville, and Jackson that work hard every single day and are willing to set up a Zoom with me at just about any hour of the day so that we can get the very best information out to Kentuckians. You can tell they love their job. They work really hard at it. They give really good advice. So to all of our Kentuckians working in the National Weather Service and anybody who provides them support, thank you very much. All right, we'll open it up to questions. We'll start with Tessa.
You've expressed some optimism that you might see some more favorable results in the Senate for your priorities. I mean, if you had to select certain things that you had to choose something, what would you put at the top of the list that you'd like to maybe see the Senate or the House?
Well, there's our priorities, and then there's some surprises in the House budget that hopefully the Senate pushes off immediately, like the blind hatchet taken to state government without any conversation or knowledge of the ramifications and repercussions. I can't imagine the Senate's going to say, we're going to go along with this and not give you enough personnel to make DJJ facilities safe. Hopefully the rest of the House won't go along with that. Hopefully we'll see amendments that do something on that. And again, I think this action was taken without knowledge of the significant impacts that it will have. I guess sometimes if you're not in the executive branch, you don't see how hard our people work and what it takes and the double shifts being pulled while we hire other people. And I will tell you, let me say something real positive about the General Assembly. The raises are working. I mean, take corrections in DJJ. It's working. We're getting more people. We're getting more applications. We're being able to be more selective. We have fewer double shifts in corrections. We are getting to a point where we were able to take more state prisoners from jails because we finally had enough people. This stops any and all of that progress. The limitations on how you respond to a natural disaster are crazy. The idea that we would just have to stop working to stop a forest fire and call a special session is crazy. I mean, those are things we need out. But when we talk about actual ways to move forward instead of to fall back, because this budget by the authors who submitted it, I don't want to call it all the House. I don't know that they all agree with it. Not only doesn't help us move forward, it pushes us backwards. When you look at the priorities, certainly you got to look at teacher pay, and there are a couple of ways to do this. Under the Patton administration, they did it through the SEEK formula, but mandated the raises. We gave them a way to do it in SEEK, but not in the formula, where they could guarantee the raises. The last way you could potentially do it is if you fully funded everything else to come to an agreement with the school system on the raises that they would give. But on that end, you're going to have to see more funding, at least in student transportation, if we're going to have the expectation that every school system is ultimately going to do the right thing. And then, they have a significant amount of money in there for childcare. We put a significant amount of money in there for childcare. It's not going to work without universal pre-K. We're going to be in the same spot we were 3 months ago, 6 months ago, and 9 months ago. We're also really going to have to figure out how to make it work, because at least the requests right now are for replacement of federal dollars and for help in salaries. Well, these are also private sector businesses, and we don't know the profit margin. We don't, in the budget at least, there aren't requirements on enrichment and quality that's going into it. So the only way we make a real headway into childcare is universal pre-K, which takes care of 25% of it. Every 4-year-old, and once they're 5, they go into kindergarten. So again, those are important areas, but everything we went over, most everywhere where I said something wasn't in it was a program that we'd agreed to in the last budget that isn't in this budget. The closing fund, the water sewer money, and others. A lot of it's trying to continue progress that, again, the General Assembly helped us to enact and really move forward with, that they should be really proud of from the last budget that they cut in this budget. I mean, when you created a really good program that works well, the water sewer, everybody's happy with. And that's hard. Everybody across the state, the counties and the cities are happy with. Why would you discontinue it? So there's a lot. There's a lot to work on. And the budget always changes a lot, but it's really important to get the information to you all, the press, and to anybody who's watching and keeping score at home about where our proposal was and where this one is. Rebecca.
Yes, the $1.1 billion you referenced, is that inclusive of the base guarantee, or is that roughly the same in both plans?
Let me get you an answer to that from John Hicks and from budget. So when you look at everything we did, we increased the base like they did. And I'd have to look at the percentages comparatively. We separately put in the money for raises. That's about $500 million. And then we separately funded textbooks, fully funded student transportation, and the other piece. So it's really an addition. If you look at all of that we did. And I want to make sure I give you the apples to apples on the parts that they did versus we did. They did increase the per pupil, but I will also tell you we have fewer pupils in our public school system. So if you look at the pure dollars coming in to our school system, even increasing the amount per pupil, they might not have the same amount next year as they did last year or the year before, because that's, remember, the amount per pupil times the number of pupils. Carolina. Yeah.
With this upcoming round, what are the specific concerns, and are power and transportation systems ready to take that on?
Our specific concerns with the weather that's coming in is first rush hour today and after rush hour today. If you can, and your employee will let you, I'd leave a little bit early to make sure you can get home, or to reduce the amount of traffic that are on the roads. Our concern is really about 6, as it's been conveyed to us. Make sure you slow down when you're getting home. And then if you can avoid going out tonight after you get home, that's what we'd ask that you do. Then get up and look at the weather tomorrow. So certainly our roads, it could be ice in the southern part of the state. It's snow potentially turning to ice here. And then it's these very frigid temperatures. You know, the number one thing we want to make sure is that everybody has power and they can stay warm, that everybody uses a generator responsibly outside of the house and far enough outside to not die from carbon monoxide poisoning. And then we will be looking at the pressure that it puts on our power systems. For the most part, they all kept up with some very limited and short in duration outages. This is in some of these systems, it is the most demand they have ever seen, and they are keeping up. Let me also say, though, when we look at energy overall and the energy needs of everything we're building right now and the needs we have in weather like we're seeing right now, it's why I'm pushing back on some of the EPA's new regulations where they're trying to shut down certain sources of power. I mean, right now we need as much as we can generate in any source and the new parts. That doesn't mean that there isn't a future energy transition, but if it's right now, we're not going to be able to power all the plants that we're building, and we're not going to be able to keep up with demand when it gets as cold as it's going to get in this weekend. That wasn't part of the question, but Sarah.
Governor, you spoke about the authors of the budget leaving the executive branch out and the mandates, et cetera. Do you think that's sending a message to your administration?
I would say that the message in this budget is that the A&R committee wants to micromanage the executive branch with quarterly reports, creating so much red tape we're not going to be able to get our jobs done. Now, the legislative branch is a legislative branch, right? And I have to respect the different policies that they make. And if they're constitutional, whether I agree or don't agree on them, I have to carry them out. Well, the executive branch has to be given the tools that it needs without the hindrances to ultimately carry out that policy and do the job that's needed for the rest of the state. Why don't we all just do the parts we do the best we can and deliver the very best product for our families? And again, we haven't had a chance to talk with leadership. I don't know that they've seen or know about all the parts that aren't funded. I will tell you, after the last budget passed, we had some representatives that went to their state park and they said, why isn't this fixed? And the park manager said, we weren't allocated the funding. And they called us and said, why don't we have the funding? And we said, because you voted for a budget that refused to fund it. All right. So part of this, we hope, is an education process for the members that can hopefully show what is in or not in. They can decide what's important to them and push their own party and leadership to try to get the best budget possible. I still believe that senators, representatives, anybody else are supposed to first and foremost represent the people of their district and fight for a better life for them, and only secondarily be members of a party, members of a committee, part of a team, that their first thing is to do the best they can for their district. Liam.
This is probably a better question for this director case, but I guess explain a little bit about this House, this GOP budget proposal with cuts to state government, how it creates more debt.
It a whole lot of what it funds, it borrows to fund it. So we have ours is funded through the extra revenue, how we keep talking about the budget surpluses, right? We've had 1.5 billion, 1.4 billion, and there's both the budget surplus we're going to have in this year, but there's also budget surpluses we haven't spent in previous years, or different pockets of money that haven't been fully spent. So what we do is we utilize all of that in the governor's proposal. And again, it's only the recurring revenue that comes in each year that we spend on recurring expenses. Every other one-time expense we spend, almost every other one, we have some debt too. It's how you fund the university projects and the rest, are done through those dollars. In other words, we pay in cash for the dollars that we have for most of them. They fund a significant portion of their budget. We could pull up the amount by issuing debt and use those dollars to pay for what we're paying for in cash. So I don't want to claim it's putting it on a credit card because it's a much longer credit card as opposed to paying for it out of what you've got in your bank account right now. On the line, we've got Tom Latek.
Thank you, Governor. Good afternoon. All this budget talk has my head swimming, so I'm going to ask you about something different, if you don't mind. Your 6-year road plan proposal. I don't recall I've ever definitively heard whether or not the I-69 bridge will be tolled or non-tolled. Can you explain that to me, please?
Yeah. So I am not in favor of tolling the I-69 bridge. I think we have enough money, enough in savings, because it is a one-time expense where if we in Indiana split what's out there, that we ought to be able to get the job done over multiple budgets. We have applied for federal grants, both for the Mountain Parkway and for I-69. The $300 million that we requested in general fund is both to help us secure one of those grants, but also to be able to tell the federal government, if you can provide a grant in one of these, we have dollars to shift to the other, and we can make major advancement on both of them. Because in the end of the day, I think both the federal government, the state government, and our localities want both of these projects to move forward. So that's always been in talks about the financing. I can tell you as governor, I do not favor tolling the I-69 bridge. I don't think it's fair, and that's one of the reasons that I put in the tolling tax credits on the Jefferson County bridge that are not included in the House budget. All right, last question, Karen Czar.
Thank you, Governor. Good afternoon. Governor, in the last couple of days during this weather, we have had 2 members of the homeless population, one in Versailles and one in Lexington, pass away. It's still not confirmed, but it potentially could have been due to the cold. I don't know if you've had a chance to really pour into House Bill 5, which would make it illegal to camp in public areas and private property. Do you think that that bill could help encourage people to seek shelter, or do you think it will be more harmful? Thank you.
Homelessness is a big, complex, difficult challenge. And one of the reasons it's so challenging is all the different reasons that people can wind up homeless, from some major financial shock to addiction to serious mental illness. And it could be a mixture of all those and so many other reasons. What that means is just one approach doesn't work for quote unquote solving or addressing the challenge. Now, where parts of the homeless population are violent, then I absolutely believe that the criminal justice system ought to be involved. Do I believe that there need to be rules that are enforced about where folks can camp and what's expected? Yes, but I'm not sure we address the parts of homelessness that are brought about by mental health, by addiction, and by others through incarceration. I don't think that is the answer. But again, I want to put the nuance on that, and that a crime committed by a homeless person is the same as a crime committed by someone else, and it has to be dealt with in that way. But again, what we've seen when we've talked about our prison systems or our DJJ, mental health is a tough area to address, but we don't address it very well through our criminal justice system, which isn't set up to ultimately deal with folks that need a different kind of help. And look at how that's been recognized in so many different ways. Look at the 988 hotline, where we're trying to get experts to talk to people in mental health crises. Look at the mobile crisis response teams we're trying to get out there again, so that we don't just have law enforcement, we have experts that are going out and helping. But I want to make sure that we all have the humility to admit that homelessness is a real challenge that nobody has a full answer for, and we have to continue to work to try to find better solutions. This is something that we're dealing with. We're going to be dealing with more, certainly rise in mental health, how we got hit by the addiction crisis, and other factors lead to the increase of it. And it's going to take all of us working together, hopefully through the lens of empathy and compassion to try to get the very best services and solutions to people in need. All right. Remember, life's short. Be kind to each other, do good things, and we will be back next week.